And that, class, is why the Zorblaxian digestive system requires a steady diet of quantum-entangled plasma particles, droned Professor Psylop, his gelatinous form jiggling with each emphasized syllable. The alien students in the advanced xenobiology lecture hall dutifully took notes, their various appendages scribbling, tapping, or psychically imprinting the information for later regurgitation, sometimes literally, in the case of the mollusks from Slime Prime. Sarah Thompson, the lone human exchange student at the Galactic University of Comparative Species Studies, stifled a yawn. She'd been on this godforsaken space station for 6 months now, and while the novelty of being surrounded by beings from 1,000 different worlds had yet to wear off completely, the tedium of academic life was universal. Trying to focus on the lecture, she absent-mindedly gazed out the window at the swirling nebula beyond, its cosmic dust reminiscent of. Holy shit! Is that snow? The words escaped her lips before she could stop them, her eyes widening in disbelief. The lecture hall fell silent, save for the wet slop of a startled mollusk dropping its datapad. Every eye, ocular cluster, and sensory organ swiveled towards Sarah. Professor Psylop's gelatinous form quivered with indignation. MS Thompson. He gurgled. While I understand that humans are prone to sudden outbursts, no doubt a vestigial trait from your species' time as prey animals, I must insist that you refrain from interrupting my lecture with nonsensical exclamations. Sarah felt her cheeks burn, but she couldn't tear her gaze away from the window. I'm sorry, Professor, but... As one, the class turned to follow her gaze. Outside the reinforced plasglass, delicate white flakes were indeed drifting past, accumulating on the station's external structures in a fine powder. Fascinating, hummed Z X-Rill, a sentient crystal being whose multifaceted body sparkled with interest. Is this some sort of localized cosmic phenomenon? Perhaps a micrometeor shower of frozen xenon? No, you rock-brained twinkling tea-light, Sarah laughed, her earlier embarrassment forgotten in the face of this miraculous sight. It's snow. Actual, honest-to-God snow. The class erupted into a cacophony of confused chatter, clicks, and electromagnetic pulses. Professor Psylop's amorphous body rippled with frustration as he attempted to regain control of the situation. Silence, he burbled, his voice amplified by the room's acoustic enhancers. MS Thompson, I demand an explanation for this disruption. What precisely is this snow, and why does it warrant such an emotional response? Sarah grinned, suddenly feeling like the most interesting specimen in a zoo full of aliens. Well, Professor, snow is a weather phenomenon from Earth. It's frozen water that falls from the sky in crystalline flakes. Where I'm from, it happens pretty regularly during winter. A tentacled cephalon raised an appendage. Pardon my ignorance, but water falls from your sky? Regularly. And you allow this? Allow it, Sarah chuckled. We celebrate it. Well, some of us do. You see, when it snows a lot, sometimes we even get what we call snow days when school or work is cancelled because there's too much snow to safely travel. The lecture hall exploded into chaos once more. The very concept seemed to short-circuit the alien students' brains. Preposterous, screeched a avian zephyrian, ruffling its iridescent feathers. You halt all productive activities due to atmospheric precipitation. How has your species not devolved into primordial sludge? Hey now, Feather Duster Sarah shot back with a smirk, I'll have you know that snow days are a cherished tradition. Besides, sometimes you need a break from the grind to have a little fun. Professor Psylop's gelatinous form was practically vibrating with a mixture of curiosity and exasperation. MS Thompson, while I'm certain your quaint planetary customs are fascinating to you, I fail to see how this relates to our study of advanced xenobiology. Sarah stood up, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Oh, but it does, Professor. What better way to study the adaptability and resilience of different species than by exposing them to a new environmental challenge? I propose we declare an impromptu field trip. Let's go outside and experience snow firsthand. A ripple of excitement pulsed through the alien students, followed quickly by murmurs of apprehension. Outside squeaked blowbacks, a timid gaseous entity contained within a shimmering force field. But the station's environmental controls are designed to accommodate a wide range of species. Sarah finished for him. Come on. Where's your sense of adventure? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Professor Psylop's gelatinous form undulated in what Sarah had come to recognize as the equivalent of a deep sigh. I suppose. He gurgled reluctantly, that there may be some educational value in this. Expedition. Very well, class. We shall adjourn to the station's external observation deck. But I expect a full report on your observations and experiences. With a cheer that ranged from high-pitched squeals to subsonic rumbles, the class began to file out of the lecture hall. Sarah found herself at the center of a whirlwind of questions. "Will this snow interfere with my crystalline lattice structure?" Zeke's rill chimed anxiously. "Nah, you'll be fine," Sarah assured him. "Might even make you sparkle more." "Is it true that humans intentionally construct crude effigies out of compacted snow?" inquired T-Lax, a hive mind composed of thousands of tiny insects. Sarah grinned. "Snowmen. Oh yeah, and we give them carrot noses and everything. I'll show you how." As they made their way through the station's winding corridors, Sarah couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. Here she was, billions of light years from home, about to introduce a bunch of aliens to one of Earth's simplest pleasures. It was moments like these that made all the homesickness and culture shock worth it.
The airlock to the external observation deck hissed open, and a gust of cold air rushed in, carrying with it a flurry of snowflakes. The alien students recoiled instinctively, but Sarah strode forward with her arms outstretched.
"Come on, you big baby," she laughed, twirling in the falling snow. "It won't bite." Cautiously, the aliens began to venture out onto the deck. Their reactions were a comedy of errors and wonder. Zeke's rill stepped out and immediately began to sparkle as snowflakes landed on his crystalline body. "Oh my," he chimed in delight. "I feel fabulous." Blawbax's force field crackled as it adjusted to the new environment, causing the snowflakes to dance and swirl around him in a miniature blizzard. "This is most peculiar," he wheezed. "My sensory inputs are quite confused." The Zephyrian who had scoffed earlier was now hopping from foot to foot, his avian instincts kicking in as he tried to catch snowflakes mid-air. "I retract my previous statement," he squawked between leaps. "This is..." Squawk. Most invigorating. Even Professor Psylop, despite his earlier reservations, seemed to be enjoying himself. His gelatinous body was slowly absorbing snowflakes, causing little pockets of ice to form within his translucent mass. "Fascinating," he burbled. "The crystalline structure of these frozen water particles is quite remarkable." Sarah, meanwhile, had already begun gathering snow to build a snowman. "All right, class," she called out, her voice filled with laughter. "Gather round for your first lesson in snow-based sculpture." As the alien students crowded around, Sarah began to explain the finer points of snowman construction. "First, you start with a small snowball and roll it around to make it bigger. Like this." She demonstrated, and soon the deck was filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes attempting to roll snowballs. The results were varied, to say the least. T-Lax, the insectoid hive mind, had divided itself into teams, each group working on a different part of their snowman. The result was a strangely symmetrical creation that looked more like a snow crystal than a traditional snowman. "Is this correct?" Instructor Sarah the hive mind buzzed in unison. Sarah bit back a laugh. "It's unique. Very artistic. I love the fractals." Blawback, still contained within his force field, had managed to create a perfect sphere of snow suspended in mid-air. "I believe I have mastered this technique," he wheezed proudly. "That's actually pretty cool," Sarah admitted, impressed despite herself. As the class continued their snowy experiments, Professor Psylop oozed over to Sarah. "MS Thompson." He gurgled, his tone a mixture of reluctant admiration and lingering exasperation. "I must admit that this impromptu field trip has proven to be unexpectedly educational. The students seem to be engaging with concepts of environmental adaptation and creative problem-solving in ways I hadn't anticipated." Sarah beamed. "See, Professor? Sometimes a little chaos is good for the learning process." And speaking of chaos, she bent down, quickly packed a snowball, and lobbed it gently at the professor's gelatinous form. The snowball passed right through Xylop, leaving a small, icy tunnel in its wake. The professor's body jiggled in what Sarah had come to recognize as surprised laughter. Most invigorating, Xylop burbled. "Is this another Earth tradition associated with snow?" "Oh, you have no idea," Sarah grinned mischievously. "Hey everyone, who wants to learn about snowball fights?" The next hour was a blur of flying snow, alien laughter, and the occasional misfired ice projectile. The Zephyrian, with his natural aerial abilities, proved to be a formidable opponent until Blawbax discovered he could use his force field to deflect incoming snowballs with pinpoint accuracy. As the impromptu battle raged on, Sarah found herself in an unlikely alliance with ZX-Rill, using his reflective surface to blind their opponents with reflected starlight.
I must say ZZX-Rill chimed as they ducked behind a hastily constructed snow fort. I'm beginning to understand the appeal of these snow days. There's a certain joy in this controlled chaos.
Sarah grinned, packing another snowball. That's the spirit. Sometimes you need to shake things up a bit, break out of the routine, experience something new. Indeed, ZX-Rill agreed, his crystalline form vibrating with excitement. I believe I shall propose a similar activity for my home world. Perhaps we could engineer a harmless crystal storm for recreational purposes. As the battle wound down, the alien students gathered around Sarah, their eyes or equivalent sensory organs shining with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Instructor Sarah Tlax buzzed, its swarm reconfiguring into a vaguely humanoid shape. We have a query. On your world, how frequently do these snow days occur? Sarah chuckled, brushing snow off her uniform. Well, it depends on where you live. Some places get them pretty often during winter, others hardly ever. The Zephyrian ruffled his feathers thoughtfully. And your educational institutions simply cease operations during these events. Is this not detrimental to your learning process? You'd think so, Sarah replied with a smirk. But sometimes a break from the routine can be more valuable than another day of lectures. It gives you a chance to experience something new, to adapt to unexpected situations. Sound familiar? The alien students exchanged glances, a wave of understanding passing through the group. Professor Xylop oozed forward, his gelatinous form now peppered with tiny ice crystals. M.S. Thompson raises an intriguing point. He burbled. Perhaps there is merit in occasionally disrupting our standard curriculum to engage in more experiential learning opportunities. A chorus of excited agreement rippled through the assembled aliens. Very well, Xylop continued, his tone one of amused resignation. I propose that we establish a new tradition at the Galactic University of Comparative Species Studies. Once per standard galactic cycle, we shall designate a Terran snow day during which regular classes will be suspended in favor of alternative educational experiences. The observation deck erupted in cheers, the cacophony of alien voices echoing across the snow-covered expanse. As the excitement died down and the class began to make their way back inside, Sarah hung back for a moment, gazing out at the star-filled expanse beyond the snow-dusted viewport. A lump formed in her throat as a wave of homesickness washed over her. ZX-Rill, noticing her hesitation, chimed softly beside her. Are you well, Sarah? You seem less luminous than before. Sarah smiled, wiping away a tear that had begun to freeze on her cheek. Yeah, I'm okay. Just missing home a bit, I guess. But you know what? This helped. Sharing a little piece of Earth with all of you. It made the universe feel a bit smaller, a bit more like home. ZX-Rill's crystalline form shimmered in what Sarah had come to recognize as a gesture of empathy. Perhaps that is the true value of these snow days you speak of. They remind us to find joy in the unexpected, to create moments of connection amidst the vast expanse of the cosmos. Sarah nodded, giving the alien a gentle pat on what she assumed was his shoulder. Couldn't have said it better myself, ZX-Rill. Now come on, let's go inside before Professor Xylop starts worrying about our core temperatures or something. As they made their way back to the airlock, Sarah couldn't help but grin. She'd come to this station to learn about alien life, but somehow she'd ended up teaching a bunch of extraterrestrials about one of humanity's silliest, most beloved traditions. And in the process, she'd learned something too, that no matter how strange or different beings from across the galaxy might seem, there was always room for a little wonder, a little chaos, and a lot of fun. The next day, as Sarah settled into her usual seat in the Advanced Xenobiology lecture hall, she noticed a change in the atmosphere. The alien students were chattering excitedly, sharing stories and comparisons of their snow day experiences. Even Professor Xylop seemed more animated than usual, his gelatinous form undulating with barely contained excitement. Attention! Class Xylop burbled as the room fell silent. Before we resume our regular curriculum, I believe we have some unfinished business from yesterday's impromptu field trip. Sarah tensed, wondering if she was about to get a lecture on disrupting class. Instead, Psylop's form shimmered in what she'd come to recognize as the gelatinous equivalent of a smile. Miss Thompson. 9. He continued, in light of yesterday's events, the faculty has decided to officially recognize your contribution to our understanding of Terran cultural practices. We would like to extend an invitation for you to lead a seminar series on adaptive recreation in varying planetary conditions. The class erupted in cheers and various alien approximations of applause. Sarah felt her face flush with a mixture of embarrassment and pride. Wow, thank you, Professor, she managed to stammer. I'd be honored. As the excitement died down and Xylop began his lecture on Zorblaxian quantum digestion, now with added snow-based metaphors, Sarah couldn't help but grin. She'd come to this station as an outsider, a curiosity from a death world that most of her classmates couldn't even imagine surviving on. But now, somehow, she'd become a bridge not just between species, but between the rigid structure of academic life and the chaotic joy of a snow day. As the weeks passed, Sarah's adaptive recreation seminar series became the talk of the station. Aliens from all corners of the galaxy signed up, eager to learn about the strange and wonderful ways humans had found to enjoy their volatile planet. Today, Sarah announced to a packed lecture hall, we're going to talk about something called surfing. A tentacled octopoid raised an appendage. Is this another snow-based activity? Sarah chuckled. Not quite. Imagine snow but liquid and moving in giant waves. The hall erupted in a cacophony of confused chatter. You mean to tell us buzzed Tlax, the hive-mind insectoid, that your planet's oceans are in a constant state of upheaval? Pretty much, Sarah grinned. And we ride these waves for fun. The looks of horror on her alien audience's faces or equivalent sensory clusters were priceless. But why, squeaked Blawbacks, his gaseous form swirling anxiously within his containment field? Sarah's eyes twinkled with mischief. Why not? Life's all about challenges, right? Sometimes you've got to dance with danger to really feel alive. As she pulled up holographic images of surfers riding massive waves, Sarah couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. Here she was, billions of light years from home, teaching a bunch of aliens about the crazy things humans did for fun. It was moments like these that made all the homesickness and culture shock worth it. After the seminar, Sarah was approached by ZX Rill, the crystalline being who had become one of her closest friends on the station. Sarah, he chimed, his facets glittering with excitement, I've been thinking about what you said regarding dancing with danger. I believe I've come up with an idea for a new recreational activity on my home world. Oh yes, Sarah raised an eyebrow. Let's hear it. We could create a controlled avalanche of crystals down one of our Silicon Mountain ZX Rill, explained. Participants would attempt to surf the cascading gems to the bottom. Sarah's jaw dropped. That's actually pretty awesome, but also incredibly dangerous. ZX Rill's crystalline form vibrated in what Sarah had come to recognize as laughter. Indeed, but as you say, is that not part of the appeal? As they walked through the station's corridors, discussing the finer points of crystal surfing, Sarah marveled at how much had changed. When she'd first arrived, most of her classmates had viewed her as a fragile curiosity from a deadly world. Now, they were actively seeking to emulate humanity's adventurous spirit. Their conversation was interrupted by an station-wide announcement. Attention all personnel and students, came Professor Psylop's gelatinous gurgle over the intercom. Due to an unexpected malfunction in our gravitational stabilizers, we will be experiencing periodic fluctuations in artificial gravity over the next 24 hours. Please adjust your activities accordingly. Sarah and Z. Grell exchanged glances. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Sarah grinned. ZX Rill's crystalline form shimmered with anticipation. If you're suggesting we find a way to turn this malfunction into an entertaining and educational experience, then yes, I believe I am. Within hours, Sarah had organized what she dubbed the first annual Galactic Gravity Games. The largest cargo bay had been cleared out and repurposed as a zero-G playground. Aliens of all shapes and sizes floated about, attempting various acrobatic feats as the gravity fluctuated unpredictably. All right, everyone, Sarah called out, her voice amplified by a translator device. Next up is the zero-G obstacle course. Remember, no propulsion device is allowed. You've got to use the environment and the changing gravity to your advantage. As she watched a Zephyrian attempt to navigate a series of floating hoops, only to be sent spinning by a sudden gravity shift, Sarah couldn't help but laugh. This was chaos, pure and simple, but it was also a perfect encapsulation of the human spirit, adapting to adversity, finding joy in challenge, and bringing people together through shared experiences. Professor Psylop oozed up beside her, his gelatinous form rippling with what Sarah now recognized as a mixture of amusement and resignation. Ms. Thompson, he gurgled. I must admit, when I first agreed to your snow day concept, I had no idea it would lead to this. Sarah grinned. Having second thoughts, Professor. On the contrary, Psylop burbled. While your methods are unorthodox, to say the least, I cannot deny their effectiveness. The students are more engaged than ever, and our research into adaptive behaviors has advanced by leaps and bounds, quite literally, in some cases. As if to emphasize his point, a mollusk from Slime Prime chose that moment to attempt a graceful leap through a floating hoop, only to be caught by a gravity fluctuation and sent careening to a wall with a wet splat. Though perhaps Psylop added dryly, we should consider implementing some additional safety measures. Sarah nodded, trying to stifle her laughter. Agreed. But you've got to admit, Professor, this is way more fun than another lecture on quantum entangled plasma particles. Psylop's form jiggled in what Sarah had come to recognize as a chuckle. Indeed, Ms. Thompson. Indeed. As the gravity games continued, Sarah found herself reflecting on her journey so far. She'd come to this station to learn about alien life, but somehow she'd ended up teaching a bunch of extraterrestrials about what it meant to be human. And in the process she'd learned something too, that no matter how strange or different beings from across the galaxy might seem, there was always room for a little wonder, a little chaos, and a lot of fun. The next day, as Sarah settled into her usual seat in the Advanced Xenobiology lecture hall, she noticed a change in the atmosphere. The alien students were chattering excitedly, sharing stories and comparing bruises or equivalent signs of minor injury from the gravity games. Attention! Class Professor Psylop burbled as the room fell silent. Before we resume our regular curriculum, I have an announcement to make. Sarah tensed, wondering if she was about to get a lecture on safety protocols and proper use of station facilities. Instead, Psylop's form shimmered in what she'd come to recognize as the gelatinous equivalent of a proud smile, in light of recent events. He continued, the Galactic University Board has decided to implement a new program. Starting next semester, we will be offering a course titled Adaptive Problem Solving: The Human Approach. Ms. Thompson, we would like you to co-teach this course alongside our regular faculty. The class erupted in cheers and various alien approximations of applause. Sarah felt her face flush with a mixture of embarrassment and pride. Wow, thank you, Professor, she managed to stammer. I'd be honored. But are you sure? I mean, I'm still a student myself. Psylop's gelatinous form rippled with amusement. My dear Ms. Thompson, I think we can all agree that you've taught us more about adaptability and creative problem-solving in the past few months than many of our tenured professors have in years. Besides, he added with a gurgling chuckle, I suspect it will be easier to keep an eye on your... Let's call them extracurricular activities, if they're officially sanctioned. As the excitement died down and Psylop began his lecture on Zorblaxian quantum digestion, now with added zero-G metaphors, Sarah couldn't help but grin. She'd come to this station as an outsider, a curiosity from a death world that most of her classmates couldn't even imagine surviving on. But now, somehow, she'd become a bridge, not just between species, but between the rigid structure of academic life and the chaotic joy of human-style problem-solving. Over the next few months, Sarah threw herself into preparing for her new role as a teacher. She spent hours in the station's vast library, researching everything from the physics of snowball trajectories to the psychology of why humans found extreme sports so appealing. Her alien friends were endlessly fascinated by her stories of human resilience and creativity. ZX-Rill, in particular, had become her most enthusiastic student. Sarah, he chimed one day as they were having lunch in the station's multicultural cafeteria. I've been pondering something you said in your last seminar about human children and their capacity for imagination. Sarah nodded, taking a bite of what passed for a sandwich in space. It was purple and slightly pulsating, but surprisingly tasty. Yeah, kids are amazing. Give them a cardboard box and they'll turn it into a spaceship, a fortress, or a time machine. ZX-Rill's crystalline form shimmered with curiosity. This concept of play as a learning tool is fascinating. On my world, young crystals are simply programmed with the necessary information for their future roles. But this human method seems far more adaptable. That's the beauty of it, Sarah grinned. When you learn through play, you're not just memorizing facts, you're learning how to think creatively, how to solve problems, how to imagine new possibilities. As she spoke, Sarah noticed that several other aliens at nearby tables had stopped eating or absorbing or photosynthesizing to listen. An idea began to form in her mind. "Hey," she said, her eyes twinkling with mischief, "who wants to see a human-style playground?" The next week, the station's largest recreation area had been transformed. Under Sarah's guidance, and with the reluctant approval of Professor Psylop, who insisted on being present purely for observational purposes, the alien students had constructed a bizarre hybrid of jungle gym, obstacle course, and interactive science exhibit. "All right, everyone," Sarah called out to the gathered crowd. "Welcome to Playground Day. The rules are simple, there are no rules. Explore, experiment, and most importantly, have fun." At first, the aliens were hesitant. The Zephyrian hovered nervously near a swing set, while a group of mollusks oozed uncertainly around the base of a slide. "Come on," Sarah laughed, grabbing ZX Rill by what passed for his hand. "I'll show you how it's done." She led him to the swing set, showed him how to sit or, in his case, balance his crystalline form on the seat, and gave him a gentle push. As ZX Rill swung back and forth, his facets caught the light, sending rainbow reflections dancing across the playground. "This is exhilarating," he chimed, his voice vibrating with excitement. Seeing ZX Rill's joy, the other aliens began to overcome their hesitation. Soon, the playground was a whirlwind of activity. Tentacled beings swung from monkey bars, gaseous entities wafted through obstacle courses, and even the mollusks found joy in sliding down ramps, leaving glistening trails in their wake. Professor Psylop, who had been observing from the sidelines, found himself drawn into the chaos. Sarah watched in amazement as the gelatinous professor stretched and contorted his amorphous form to navigate a series of tunnels and tubes. "You know," MS Thompson Psylop gurgled as he emerged, his form jiggling with what Sarah now recognized as laughter. "I'm beginning to understand the appeal of this play concept. It's quite liberating." As the day wore on, Sarah noticed something remarkable happening. The aliens weren't just playing, they were innovating. A group of cephalons had figured out how to use their tentacles to create a complex pulley system, turning a simple seesaw into a multi-level elevator. The hive-mind insects had transformed the sandbox into a constantly shifting, three-dimensional puzzle. "This is amazing," Sarah murmured to herself. "They're not just copying human games, they're creating their own, based on their unique physiologies and ways of thinking." As the playground day came to an end, Sarah gathered everyone for a final announcement. "Great job, everyone," she called out. "I hope you all had fun, but more importantly, I hope you've learned something about the power of play and imagination. Remember, no matter what challenges you face in life or in your studies, there's always room for creativity and joy." The alien students chittered, buzzed, and pulsated their agreement. Even Professor Psylop's gelatinous form seemed to glow with approval. As Sarah looked out at the sea of alien faces and other sensory organs, she felt a warmth in her chest. She'd come to this station to learn about alien life, but in teaching these beings about human resilience and creativity, she'd learned something profound about the nature of intelligence and adaptability across the galaxy. The universe, she realized, was far more wondrous and full of potential than she'd ever imagined. And somehow, improbably, a simple snow day had been the key to unlocking that potential. As the crowd dispersed, chattering excitedly about their experiences, Professor Psylop oozed up beside Sarah. "MS Thompson," he gurgled, his tone uncharacteristically warm, "I must say. When you first arrived on this station, I had my doubts. Humans have a reputation for being unpredictable." Sarah grinned. "Is that your polite way of saying we're chaos incarnate?" Psylop's form rippled in amusement. "Perhaps. But I've come to realize that there's a method to your madness. Your species' ability to find joy and learning opportunities in even the harshest conditions. It's quite remarkable." "Thanks," Professor Sarah said, feeling a lump form in her throat. "That means a lot coming from you." "Yes, well," Psylop burbled, a bit embarrassed by the emotional turn of the conversation. "Don't let it go to your head. We still have a lot of work to do to prepare for your new course. I expect a full curriculum proposal on my desk, ear in my absorption field, by next week." As Zizib oozed away, Sarah couldn't help but laugh. Some things, it seemed, were universal, even in the vastness of space. There was no escaping homework. But as she looked out at the remnants of the playground, at the groups of aliens still excitedly discussing their experiences, Sarah felt a sense of purpose she'd never known before. She was no longer just a student, an observer of alien life. She was a teacher, a bridge builder between worlds, and it had all started with a simple snow day. As Sarah made her way back to her quarters, her mind was already buzzing with ideas for her next lesson. After all, she hadn't even introduced them to water balloon fights yet. The galaxy, she decided with a grin, had better brace itself. Because if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was finding new and exciting ways to have fun and dragging everyone else along for the ride.